This is part two of episode 17 of Uncommon Conversations with Bo Hopkins, who's a powerlifter and Mormon out of Texas. And he will probably be here soon. We'll be hopping back on and continuing our conversation.
Lightweight, baby.
All right, I'm back.
My youngest brother that I said is getting into powerlifting. He just said lightweight, baby.
Ain't nothing but a peanut.
Ain't no
Yeah.
peanut.
Yeah,
Everybody want to be big, but ain't nobody want to lift some heavy ass weight.
That's right. Well, so back in May, just a few months ago, I got to go to that, the original Metroplex gym down there in Arlington and do a little rack pull competition. And I didn't win, but I was pretty happy because I started out with 700 and I hit that. Then I went for 800 and I missed it. And but it was so I walked it off. And so I had one more chance to go hit it, and there was just a giant guy. In fact, he actually competed in the Pioneer Open, but he's a trainer at the Metroplex gym in Fort Worth, powerlifting trainer. He's just a giant dude, really strong. And I said, "Hey man, did you see anything that I could have done that I didn't do?" And he says, "You gotta lock those lats in." I said, "Okay." And so I walked up there, grabbed it. And I locked those lats, and I just squoze that back as hard as I could, and I yanked that 400 off the 800 off the blocks like it was nothing. So it was pretty cool. But
moments like that are awesome. Yeah, that's so cool. That's good. 800 pounds. That's solid. I know guys who, that's like the top range of what I've ever heard people doing with that. So that's very, very.
Well,
actually, that's the most I've heard in my own life of someone doing that. Actually, I think I might have looked it up once that people did more, but
the kid that won that night rack pulled 1,000 pounds, and he couldn't have been more than $185. So he was a strong kid, man. But it was the very same platform, the exact same platform that Ronnie Coleman squatted the 800 pounds for a double.
Oh. Dude, that's one of my favorite videos of all time, man. That was crazy.
Awesome?
That was crazy. That was so much weight.
Cool. Pretty cool.
That was impressive. And I love tips and tricks like that for lifting, that like help you take your lift to the next level. Like little things, like for me, squeezing the bench press bar, that helped give me like a little extra nudge, and then getting the warm up of my grip and like warming up my arm, like neurologically warming up my hands and getting everything sort of going, and my breath control and stuff like that, like little things like that just like can take your lift a little further, and it's fun because it's like you think you can do this and then just a little trick and you get to that next notch.
It's little cues. So like on bench, so say you're at the very top of the bench, you just can't quite lock it out. So a couple of tips you can do: instead of trying to push straight up, push past your forehead, and it'll usually lock out. And if you take your wrists and just kind of put the wrist just a little bit and push towards your forehead, usually you can lock it out. So there's all sorts of this little. I learned that from Mark Bell. So, but there's all.
Shout out to Mark Bell. He's an awesome guy.
Yeah, the guy's a stud. So I love all his equipment. So like his sleeves, his wraps. In fact, I use his gangster wraps when I wrap my knees. And
nice.
All his stuff is just fantastic.
Really outside of belts, I have not explored equipment yet. I feel like until I get advanced into my whatever I can do, I don't want to incorporate those tools yet. But
sure,
absolutely.
But yeah, fun stuff.
So politically, what has it been like for you sort of growing up and throughout your life? What did politics mean to you? You said you were a business owner, so maybe you were thinking about politics in a different way a while ago. I don't know.
Yeah.
But and you're from Texas, so obviously you hate freedom and guns and God.
Yeah.
Or not.
Hate them so much. No, I grew up with very conservative parents, and they when I don't think I was 15, they bought this book. It was written by Cleon Skousen, and it's called The Making of America. And it's just I mean, the book's like, like this thick. It's just a huge book. And it goes through kind of, the first part of the book kind of goes through each of the founding fathers and kind of who they were, and
Oh, wow.
what they believed in, what they were like. And then from the rest of the book, which is very little, I mean, it's certainly not the most in-depth on each founding father, but it's enough to, as a 15-year-old kid, I learned a lot. But the most of the book really goes through line by line, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, all the amendments, the Federalist Papers, and kind of why they did what they did. And really that book really kind of solidified my view, I guess, I didn't understand that it was my political view at the time, but it really, it kind of solidified what I thought about freedom and what I thought about the United States. Of course, I think it's the greatest country in the world. I think that it was absolutely inspired men from God to be able to put this Constitution together. And I pray to God that we can, as a people, not be morally bankrupt where we lose it all. So, but yeah, I'm very conservative. I think I'm registered as a Republican, but by no means do I feel like the Republicans do everything right. But I certainly lean towards them far more than I would the Democrat Party.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I really just say I'm more of a constitutional kind of conservative person. So,
I think describing the more nuanced your view, the harder it is to sort of give someone a label to sort of call you. But I kind of consider myself essentially like a moderate, but an American moderate, meaning
okay.
like the basic precepts of America that is sort of, so if you read the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and you sort of look at basic American history, and you look at the Federalist Papers and the conclusion of all that kind of stuff about the sovereignty of the individual, equality of individuals under the law, maximum liberty, the right to, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The essential conclusions of all that stuff is the American vision, as that's how I see it.
Yeah.
And I subscribe to that, and then I have nuances branching out from that worldview, because I do believe it's not a coincidence that we are one of the most popular to come to countries, or the most popular to come to country. We have more immigrants come to our country than any other country on the planet as a percentage of our population. So like by definition, we're the most attractive place to come. And it's not by accident. It's because we've stumbled onto sacred truth in the way we structured our country. And it shows in what has been produced from it. And so, yeah, so I'm right there with you on that. It's amazing that you had you got exposed to that book. So you had such a concrete grounding in that kind of thinking.
Yeah, my parents actually homeschooled me for a time, and then I wanted to play sports, and so the schools don't do this anymore. But back then, I could take partial credits from the school, and they allowed me to actually play sports if I took a certain amount of credits, and then I could also supplement the rest of it just with a homeschooling course. And so that's what I did all through high school. So I took a few classes at school, then I would go to the library and do my work there in the library so I could play sports. So.
Right on. Yeah, I did. So I went to charter school for part of my high school experience. And basically, from about 15, 16 on, so during that time period, my mom actually did homeschool my brothers, took them home and worked with them for a couple years.
Okay.
And I failed out of regular high school. The second semester of my sophomore year, I failed 5 out of 7 classes.
Okay.
And it was for a bunch of reasons that are too long to get into. But basically, just mentally, I kind of fell apart, emotionally fell apart around that time. Tragic things in life. And the charter school actually offered that kind of an opportunity to be able to go play sports and go there part-time and do the charter school thing. I didn't do it. But the point of bringing all this up was just that from about 15, 16 on, I sort of, like, my mom helped by prompting me to write some essays and things here and there. But for the most part, after 15, 16, I homeschooled myself, basically. I started self-educating myself, studying so I was trying to figure out, because my dad was not an example of anything to strive to be like, unfortunately. And so that left me, so people, when they think of the word father, the category of father in their own mind, they have their own father. And there's this set of ideas and things that register when you think of father that is resonating with your ideas about your own dad. For me, it was a blank spot. For me, when I reflected on it, it was like I didn't have any substantive material to go off of to say this is kind of what the day-to-day of what a man and a proper masculine sort of spirit looks like.
Okay.
So I knew consciously I needed to go find that. And so I just started looking for admirable men that I could emulate and learn sort of the art of masculinity by osmosis from. And that sort of triggered that, plus my girlfriend now, who at the time was just a romantic interest, said I was too immature to date. And she wasn't interested in dating either, but she said I was too immature to date her at the time. So that put me on the path of like growing myself and maturing myself. Yeah. And then at the same time, studying to sort of be a man. It all kind of came together in that way. And that put me on the path towards sort of studying these sorts of things and becoming self-educated. I can appreciate I can appreciate the limitations and the failings of the traditional education system.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we actually homeschool our children now. And I guess the thing that I just don't like about the educational system, I guess the thing that just bugs me the most is that it almost stifles, and I say this very carefully because this is not by any stretch of the imagination true for everyone. But I think it just kind of stifles curiosity and creativity with learning. So and the schools weren't necessarily that way so much when I went to school, 24 years ago. But now it just feels like it's ran like a prison. They can't talk, file in line, don't say anything, don't touch your pencil on the desk until I tell you. And I don't agree with that. I think the kids need to be able to nurture that curiosity and desire to learn and find and question and look for things and not wait for someone to say, do it. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that and homeschooling by no stretch of the imagination it has its cons too, but yeah, I like the fact that it teaches our kids to be proactive, to be curious, learn to be self-motivated, and to recognize that you can't wait for people to go search your dreams or to start work or do those things. And you have to learn to be a self-starter.
Yeah, I have many dreams in this particular area for institutions and businesses and things I want to create in the future. But the essential aspect is this. I feel like very cheaply you could create an assisted homeschooling program where it's like the academics and the solid knowledge bases and the skill sets can be sort of centralized and systematized, and you could figure out a way to spoon feed the kid information at the rate that they can sort of absorb it effectively, and you'd modulate stuff. And I've thought about it a lot and how you could do it and how I would bring the team together and all that kind of stuff, but that's down the road. You're basically, you want to foster with that kind of a system two things that you sort of spoke on in certain ways: discipline, self-discipline, self-motivation, but basically just discipline, and then creativity. You want to foster both of those, and I see them as, they're not opposing in my opinion. They're just distinct sort of ways of approaching things. One is about limiting yourself within frames, and the other one is about breaking frames, so to speak. But school has now become about obedience. It's not about discipline, and it's about we tell you stuff, you regurgitate back to us what we told you to say, and then that is your way of thinking of the world. Yeah. Is just you listen to the people who tell you what to think, and then you regurgitate that, and that's how you get by. And that like you said, stifles people. Not everyone, and this is good and bad, slow learners and fast learners, not everyone is going to learn at the same pace in every subject, in every part of their life, depending on what's going on at home. And so the fact that we have this structured, modulated, everyone's at the same pace system means the average people are serviced pretty well, and anyone on either end of the spectrum is sort of left out and like you said, stifled if you're an overachiever, and stifled because you're not getting the attention you need if you're an underachiever. it does a lot of damage. So I definitely think that oh, and I wanted to add to that, we basically have a communist socialist structure to our schools too, but it's also kind of like segregation on top of that. Where you can afford to pay rent, or where, let me rephrase that, where your parents can afford to pay rent is where you get to go to school.
Yeah.
You don't get to go to school outside of that little district. Why?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
You don't get to, like around Fresno, the Fresno, California area, Central California, there's a town, it's basically attached to Fresno. They're one and the same, more or less, in terms of the way they look. There is no barrier between the two. It's just building to building, parking lot to parking lot. Clovis is the best schools in the entire region, far and away, no question. They provide, like, they produce the best results, even if you account for differences in IQ and various other factors. They're just a great school. The entire region should have access to those teachers, even if it's just through digital lectures, and then you can have tutors in little satellite locations all throughout the region. And you could, like, there's so many interesting ways that it could be specialized. If you have, like you said, a kid on the spectrum, or you have a kid that's an athlete, or you have a kid that wants to be an engineer, you could have, in a different system, you could have specialized schools for 12-year-olds. You know, most doctors that want to be a doctor from like age 12 or 13 on, and they know it. They have to spend 10 years building up a resume to just start actually learning how to be a doctor.
Yeah. When
they should have been able to be put on that program at age 12, and then we have fully educated, fully formed doctors at age 22 instead of 32. You know, so like it's
interesting you say that. So my wife, when I think we had our last child, one of the nurses, she was from either Sweden or Norway. I'm trying to remember. She that's kind of what, I mean, I realize they're kind of a socialist country, but their school system was set up as such that when they had,
what's funny is, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
That they would look and kind of identify what the children kind of lean toward personality wise and what their aptitudes were. And then from age 5, when they're entering those schools, they're kind of figuring out, once they figure it out, they tailor their school program to help them be able to achieve that. And that's a great idea. I mean, because like you say, a guy who knows he's going to be a doctor kind of knows from early age that's what he wants to do. And what if we had put up a path to be able to say, this is how you're going to be able to achieve it, so you're there either quicker or you're more prepared to be able to handle it when it's actually time to do it. So anyway,
yeah, it's interesting because you said, and it's because left-wingers will say that, you know, it's Democrat socialism in places like Norway and the Scandinavian countries, basically, and Sweden and stuff. So first off, all of those countries have higher markers for economic freedom than the United States, all of them. So on the economic front, they're freer than we are. So all those socialists can stick it because they don't know what they're talking about. Yeah. But Sweden has mandatory gun gifts to citizens, where you're trained and given a gun at age 18. So they're by no means, you know, crazy left-wingers. And also Sweden, their currency, they have a deflating currency, which means it increases in value per piece of currency instead of decreasing in value through inflation. And they have negative interest rates, which means their businesses get paid to take loans, and their people get paid to take loans for houses and stuff like that. So they do all sorts of things in very interesting and very capitalistic and very freedom-loving ways. I think the United States is just going to be part of the reason why that is because we are the flag of freedom in the world. Even if there's certain countries that are more economically free, or like I said, the Second Amendment situation with Sweden, we're still the figurehead. So we're the center of the attacks. And so we're where if they can erode freedom in America, they can erode freedom everywhere.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, we are the giant sort of big domino that's the first one to start, you know, falling back, and then everything goes. So, which is why the situation in Afghanistan should hopefully wake a lot of people up to action. Not even if you want to get about whether we stay or we go, or should we have gotten in there, or any of that, but the incompetence and the consequences of what has happened.
Yeah, 100%.
Of human life and suffering, the danger that the Taliban now poses to the entire world. They have one of the biggest militaries in the world now because we gave it to them.
Yeah.
You know, like Like, so it's,
It-
time for action, and I don't mean time for action in any serious way. I literally pray that Joe Biden does not get assassinated, because I'm terrified that he'll come back, if you know what I'm saying. Um, but
yeah,
but he needs to be impeached. Like the consequences of him staying in that position are only going to add from here on out. It's only going to escalate. So with like regardless of how you feel about the man, so he had two brain aneurysms, which is bleeding in the brain. One actually was bleeding in the brain, one wasn't. But this was back in 2013, before 2013, I mean.
yeah,
So it has no bearing on what's happening now. And if you look at 2018 to 2021 Biden, he's now maybe 40% of what he was, maybe 30% of what he was. Like, the decline is so obvious to anyone paying attention. And I feel like so many people are scared to say it. Like, when I hear people talking about how vulnerable we are because he's in office, I kind of am like, why are you saying that? But I'm also like, why isn't everyone saying that?
yeah.
Like, like we can't, I don't want to, I was planning on getting certain things secured before I would ever consider running for office. Just not that I pretty much am going to run for office. It's just got to be with the right sort of support structure underneath me. And I want to build news institutions and things like that before I do that. That way I can have sort of there's good things out there to sort of, unite people in an effective way.
Yeah.
But this Afghanistan thing has made me like starting to rethink that. If I could somehow dial in my life circumstances to make it happen sooner, to make this kind of achievable, I'm like, it might be the time now, man. Like I don't know how much extra time we have to spare. Like, the January 6th was an inflection point, and I feel like this is another inflection point. So
100%. We need good people to step up that are willing to go do and stand up for the right thing. I mean, we absolutely, there is a drought of people that are willing to stand up. Right.
There's a drought of leadership in America right now. We have our tail between our legs, and it's pathetic. We're the greatest nation on earth, and we should proudly and unapologetically be patriotic and stand up for what we believe. And we're cowards. We've been taught, and I was taught this in my family. If you have nothing nice to say nothing at all. That's bullshit. The truth is not always nice. The truth is not always nice. And now we have a generation of people that are scared to speak truth because it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so we're going to opt out of freedom of speech.
Yeah.
It's not even going to be taken from us,
Yeah. Well, what does it say? That the wicked taketh the truth to be hard. But
this is true.
All you have to do is just have a little humility, and the truth isn't that hard. The truth is there to help you.
Yeah.
Right.
If you have a false image of yourself, the truth is very toxic.
Yes. Yeah. So, well, I'd vote for you.
Well, I appreciate it. I'd vote for me too. But that's just because, so I used to think, and Jordan Peterson needs to run for Prime Minister of Canada yesterday. He had this weird, stupid conception, and I had the same exact weird, stupid conception that if you're not the ideal candidate, you really shouldn't enter that arena. No. If you're marginally better than anyone in office right now, you get in there right now.
Yeah.
That is because that's who's in power right now affecting change, is those incompetent, corrupt sellouts.
Yeah. Well,
so anyone would be better than them.
I don't know. Right? I mean,
sorry, you cut out for a second.
I said, I don't know if there is such a thing as the perfect candidate.
No, there never will be. There's no such thing as the perfect man. So it would be unlikely you'd ever have a perfect candidate.
Yeah, we're all flawed. You know what I mean? So there's going to be something. We're all going to make mistakes. But like you say, if you're marginally better than what we got currently, you're a win.
Yeah. A solid bank it in there. # winning.
Yeah.
Tiger's blood, the whole deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So what has your experience been? So you're from Texas, so you're not necessarily you're not necessarily your standard Mormon. There's the Texas sort of toughness and infusion probably that's in there. But what has been your relationship in terms of being a Trump supporter, which I assume you are, and being a Latter-day Saint? Has there been any conflicts there? What conflicts have you seen other people bring up? And how do you feel about all that?
Oh, look, man, I love Trump. Honestly, I love him. I love his mean tweets. I miss him. Like you say, missing that mean tweet right now.
Yeah, for real.
um, uh, morally, with the whole women thing, obviously, yeah, I wish he hadn't done it. I wish he hadn't said the things he said. I wish he was true to his wife. It's just, not because I cast a judgment against the guy. It's because I know that he personally would be much happier in his own personal life if he would have been true to his wife. So, but that mean I'm not going to vote for him? No, I'm going to vote for him. He puts America first. I think he's a patriot. I think he
Mm-hmm.
loves America. I think with his actions, he governs surprisingly more conservative than I think that most people thought he was going to do. And anything he said he was going to do, he seemed to go out and actually get it done. One of the things I loved about it,
He chased down every possible option to get the job done, and that was one of his superpowers. Is he would not give up, and like that's kind of how January 6th happened. He sort of just to the very bitter end until the last possible moment will explore every option for victory. Like that's
and
that's a leader. That's a leader in certain ways,
And you can tell what kind of man he is based off his kids. He's got he's got good,
solid kids.
They're patriots. They love America and they're good. And of course I give that credit to their mother. Obviously, clearly she was a good mom.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like, regardless of their differences, he certainly supported their mother as far as, making sure that she had what she needed and could take care of the kids. And so, I love the man. I mean, and he's not perfect. He's made mistakes, but gosh darn it, everyone has an opportunity to repent, be better, and change. So, yeah, for me, it really wasn't a conflict. I mean, you put my life under a microscope, and trust me, I have plenty of flaws. So, I thought he was a great president. Certainly better than what we have going on right now.
Yeah, I pretty much feel the exact same way. I think, definitely. So here's the thing. Even from Melania's perspective, their relationship is not exactly. Their relationship is not exactly what you would expect from the ideal sort of standard husband and wife. Meaning, she was interviewed and she was asked, like, "Do you think your husband would be with you if you weren't beautiful?" And she was like, "Do you think I'd be with him if he wasn't rich?" Like that was her response, and I was like, "Thank you for some honesty." But also, like,
I appreciate the
Trump has been. So here's how I thought about Trump, because I like to try to go back and think about how he grew up. At 18 years old, he was the son of a multimillionaire rich businessman and horn dog playboy, which meant he was out there getting after it, and at the same time, every woman he would deal with, his bank account was sitting there as his wingman, in the good and the bad sense, meaning they saw that and they wanted that.
Yeah.
So it'd be very difficult for a man in that position to have relationships that are deeply authentic. And what I've seen on the personality side, what I've seen about what Trump appreciates about his wife is her competitive nature, her intellectual rigor. She speaks multiple languages, and he has talked about on a couple times, and it could just be Trump saying a story, but he's talked about asking his wife stuff. I saw, someone who was a third party that I consider very reliable went to a dinner thing where they met him, and they were talking about something. He literally just like, "So honey, what do you think about, whatever, this guy's saying this, that, and the other thing." And so I feel like there might have been some sort of an agreement between them prior to getting together, like to where she's concerned with, the image of things, so to speak. So she doesn't want a bunch of stories about what he's doing out there. Like, this is all speculation, and at the end of the day, it's a job that he's going after, and the competence of the job matters much more to me than any person's individual failings. Like, I would not choose an evil person if I can avoid it, but I will also just take the best person for the job when the job is managing the lives of 330 million people to some degree. Absolutely. It's such an important thing. You really can't put personalities in there. And also, we're coming off of Obama, so Obama was the cool president, the president that was popular and everybody loved. He, won by, huge margins. He did very well for himself. And every single one of his speeches that I heard, first off, I heard it in high school in my biology class,
Yeah.
which made me sort of be like, I think it was a State of the Union address, but I was sort of like, why are we being shown this, in high school? Even at the time, I was like, this seems a little weird. But I was like, all right, I'll watch it. And what I felt after every single speech of Obama's I've ever seen is he touched my heart. He said a bunch of things that I really resonate with, and he laid out certain goals that I absolutely agree with that are all vague and very, very, highfalutin or whatever you would want to say. And then none of the reality lined up with anything that he had said. Like almost none of it. Almost none of it. Like even the things that people say that are good about Obamacare, it's like 6 pieces of regulation changes that they talk about, and it's a 2,000 page piece of legislation. So it's like even the best thing of his entire 8 years was a crap fest and only put Big Pharma more sort of over, around the neck of the American people. So
it was
I don't even consider that a win.
well, from a business owner's perspective, it was difficult to find good insurance that I could provide for my employees. We were able to do it, but I tell you, it was hard. It was really, really hard. And now that being said, over the last 3 years, we've had great insurance I could offer my employees. And but
so what?
We went through 8 years of it was difficult, man. It was so expensive, and the plans were not good. The deductibles were it was insanity. So
what has been the transition? So I haven't done any studying on this regard. I didn't look at the numbers of deductibles and how things changed. I know his various structural changes that opened up competition and things like that, and I understand in principle more decentralized, more competitive systems with lower barriers to entry and all that kind of stuff like that makes the system more effective. Someone just knocked on the door here, so I'm going to go see what's going on there. I'm going to try to, I don't know if I can pause this. I'm just going to drop off and we'll come back on for another one, and I'll message you before that.
sounds good.
Okay.